Is Rachel M. Harper. She is a novelist and a screenwriter. She is the author of The Side of Providence, which was recently adapted into a television plot. That's better. You always forget to put them back down. Which was recently adapted into a television pilot, and Brass Ankle Blues. Her short fiction and poetry have appeared in many anthologies, including Black Cool, 1,000 Strains of Blackness, and the journals Carolina Quarterly, Chicago Review, and the African American Review. A graduate of Brown University and the University of Southern California, Harper is on the faculty at Spalding University's low residency MFA in writing program. She is currently at work on a new novel and several TV and film projects, and she lives here in Los Angeles. Let's welcome Rachel.
I think that in many ways the act of writing and carrying the identity of being a writer is an act of resistance in itself. And I think for myself and many of you, when we come from marginalized or disenfranchised communities, the idea of standing up and telling our truths is a serious act of resistance. This piece I'm going to read from tonight, it's an excerpt from a new short story that I've just completed, which is inspired by the life of Lorraine Hansberry. And it's actually based on some of the journal entries that were found and just available now years after her death. All her papers are at the Schomburg Center in Harlem, and you should go if you haven't been. And I'm writing about love, and as many of you may know, love itself, the act of loving. And for me in this story, the act of writing about love was also an act of resistance. The story is called The Confessions of DS. And DS are the initials of someone that was found in Lorraine Hansberry's journals. In the beginning, Lorraine used to call me a heartbreaker. "You're a heartbreaker, Dorothy, I just know you are." And she would reach out and touch my hand, laughing as she said it, like it was a compliment, like she was calling me beautiful. But it was more than that. It was like she was reciting a fact about me, something immutable, like the name on my birth certificate, but with even more significance, and something only she knew about me, a secret only she held, like the exact hour and minute of the day I would die. Now, I know the same about her. January 12th, 1965, 8:36 p.m. But I didn't think about anything as mundane as mortality back then, not when I first met Lorraine backstage at the Landmark Theater, when her lipstick had worn off and her hair was pressed against her temples from sweat, but her palms were cool, as if she had just dipped them in pond water. She held my hand between both of hers longer than she should have, and smiled that Dorothy Dandridge smile as she thanked me for coming out to see her little play. And did I like it? And did I want to meet Mr. Portier? Is that why I had come backstage? No, I didn't think about anything so horrible as pancreatic cancer back then, of her being too sick to write or even sit up in bed with me, too weak to hold the bowl of soup I made for her from greens in her neglected garden. So I had to hold it myself and feed her, small mouthfuls, just like I was encouraging a baby to finish her peas. Just one more bite, sugar, just one more bite, and then you can rest. I could not imagine an early and painful death was what fate had in store for Lorraine. At 34, not someone as smart and hardworking as she was, as accomplished, not someone who had been so blessed. She'd had her share of hardships too. Her father died young, and she married a man she loved, but could never be fully exposed to, could never be fully equal to, and could never fully surrender to. No, she knew better than that. Knew she had to save that for her love affairs with women. There, I said it, affairs, plural. I know there was more than just me. I'm not naive. But I'd like to think I was the most important one. I know I was the last one. And maybe that alone makes me important. It was New Year's Eve, 1965, the last time I saw her, less than 2 weeks before she died. We had arranged to spend the holiday together, but there was a snowstorm that shut down the trains and I couldn't get out of the city. She was living up in Croton, then north of the city, in a cute Cape Cod-style house, perfect for two, but she stayed there by herself. She paid the mortgage and cut the grass. She was her father's child. Like him, she liked to drink, as do most lesbians I know. Nothing fancy or French like me, just gin martinis or scotch, maybe brandy when the weather got cold. But she always kept a bottle of champagne in the fridge for me, with a fluted glass on its side in the icebox, just one. When I finally got there, it must have been the 2nd or 3rd of January, Lorraine opened the door with the chilled bottle already in her hand, a towel wrapped around the cork as she twisted it open slowly. "Happy New Year," she said, already laughing as she turned slightly away from me, letting the cork pop into the towel. The champagne bubbled forth with wild, unbridled force, like its contents had been held under pressure for too long. She poured me a drink and we sat in the kitchen, Lorraine in her bathrobe, her hair pinned away from her face in flattened curls, and me dressed in an evening gown, like I always dressed back then, like I was going to a show and thought I might be asked during intermission to join the ensemble on stage. I was never one to be unprepared. The night I arrived, I tried to take her dancing, or at least out for Italian food at the only restaurant she liked north of Harlem. But she said she was too tired to bathe and get dressed, but why don't I follow her lead and slip into something more comfortable? I finished the remainder of my drink in one swallow and said nothing, then turned my back to her, twisting with such grace the chair didn't dare make a sound. I flipped my hair to the side, letting it rest on my shoulder, and revealed my back to her. Then I waited, for what I knew wouldn't be more than a few seconds. Lorraine wasn't one to miss an invitation. And then I felt the silk of her fingertips against my skin, running the length of my neckline as she searched for the metal hook that held my dress not only up, but tight across my bosom. The hook finally unfastened, I stood up slowly, my knees together like a pinup girl. The hem brushed against my toes as the dress surrendered, like a curtain falling at the end of a show. I stepped out from the pile of chiffon that circled my feet like a golden lasso. I picked up that dress and hung it neatly over the backside of the chair, then unhooked my brassiere and lay it on top of that dress. Lorraine exhaled. I stood there before her in just a slip, my nipples erect against the sheer satin, my bare feet cold against the linoleum, and waited. Lorraine liked to be in charge. She wanted to set the pace and control the staging, write all the scenes. All I had to do was show up, listen for my cue, and step on stage. This makes it seem rehearsed, perfunctory, but it was anything but that. It was the most erotic lovemaking I've ever experienced, ignited in her mind like an idea, the kernel of a new scene, then played out through the most passionate improvisation, like a jazz solo that goes on for hours. No one understands what goes on between two women in love, how they learn to want things only the other can give things only the other can take, how they harden and soften, pulse and throb, clench and expand in ways they didn't know were even possible until they found each other. Don't believe me if you can't imagine what I'm saying. Don't waste your time or mine. Just remember what I said and that I tried to tell you. I didn't have to wait long that night. Soon Lorraine was standing beside me, moving with confidence like she always had, as if she were dressed in a fancy wool suit, tailored to fit her slim hips, as if her hair was done and she wore a new perfume instead of swimming in that threadbare bathrobe stained with coffee grounds and smelling of smoked meat, as if she stood tall before a microphone, ready to deliver a speech that would make 1,000 hands come together in applause, as if her voice were strong and sharp, as if she was Diana Washington at the march, or Dr. King, as if she was a protest song, when really all she was my girl, my sweet baby, my brown berry gone to rot too soon. Yes, Her body was frail, her dark hair already thin and falling out, yet she was strong, strong enough to hold me and dance together in that kitchen, 10 days from death, our naked bellies pressed together so hard. We wanted to become the same body, share the same skin. We wanted to hold each other so close we would dissolve the boundary between us and forge something real and tangible in its place, something I would still be able to hold long after she was gone. We went to bed, to eat and laugh and eventually sleep. We slept for many hours. We made love in the morning with the bright winter sun slicing through the closed curtains. We unplugged the telephone and hid from the neighbors. I missed my train back to the city, tore my return ticket in half, feeding it to the fire that dwindled on her stone hearth. Lorraine wanted to write. She had so many stories she needed to tell, so she dragged herself from the bed each morning to sit at her desk, pounding the typewriter for as long as she could sit up, working on a new play, an idea, a poem, anything. Later, she would come back to bed with a composition book and 3 knife-sharpened pencils, and only when the tips were dull would she finally put them down for the day. One day, I will write about you, she had told me the first night we kissed. Her tongue hot with liquor as it slipped into my mouth. I will write poems for you, she said, and plays, and you will read them aloud to me, and then we will have made something together, something we never have to give back. She died before that could happen. Thank you.